Welcome to another sprint demo with the Evernym team that contributes to our Upstream open source projects in Hyperledger and Sovrin. We're glad to be able to show you what we've worked on over the past couple of weeks and what we talk a little bit about what we're going to do next. Our main focus has been releasing the work we've been doing for the last 4 months on the view change algorithm. We've been switching from, we had an odd implementation of an RBFT view change. It didn't exactly match the academic papers. But we're switching to the canonical PBFT view change. It should be simpler and more efficient. And so we're really proud of our effort there. We originally estimated it to take us till October when we started the project. For a while, we thought we were running ahead of schedule. And we were thinking maybe we get this out in September. We've decided to wait till October and make sure that we have adequate testing. So the current plan is to release a lot of the refactoring that we did for the view change. And we'll actually release the view change code. We'll just take the release out of master, but currently it's configured to use the old view change system instead of the new view change system. So we'll give you more updates on that in a few minutes, but that's the overview of the release. Excited to get that out, and at the end of October, we'll get the official view change out. View change fix. The second focus we've had is working on Aries architecture, and we've made some good progress with the Aries community on what the Aries architecture should look like, and some of the core libraries, the common shared Rust libraries. What should threading look like there? You know, what repositories should be there? It's been very collaborative. We've really enjoyed working with the team at the Sovrin Foundation and at Kiva and at British Columbia, government of British Columbia, on what this should look like and seeing some of their contributions. So they're making progress. We've been making progress there. But one of the options we're evaluating is maybe we can get support in Evernym products quicker by adding support for the Aries connection protocol to libvcx. Libvcx was not intended to be a flexible library, and so it's fairly complicated. So we're evaluating whether that's an option. But we're probably going to put some of our other Aries work on hold, Aries architecture work. I mean, hopefully Kiva and some of these others continue, and we'll be happy to collaborate with them. But we want to make sure we're going to explore this option to see if we can bring industry interoperability to our products quicker than if we go through the entire Aries architecture exercise. So that's the main thing on the SDK. We'll give some more updates on that release in a minute. The other thing we've been working with is the Kiva team has been trying to add support for Ubuntu 18.04 for Indy node, official 18.04 packages. The delivery pipeline for that, the DevOps pipeline for continuous integration, continuous delivery, is fairly complicated to add an entire new environment, and the dependency management takes a while. That's probably not going to make the release. We'll get back with that team and figure out if we should wait or the best way to proceed. But we talked about that in some previous conversations, and but the goal was to cut the release today so we could release tomorrow or Monday. There's still some DevOps work there, so that's the update on that. Those are that's the main summary of where we're at. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll let Artem take over and talk about the SDK release.
Hello everyone. I would like to tell about upcoming release of Indy SDK. This version is 1.12. I believe it will be available on next Monday or Tuesday. Which release is mostly devoted to fully qualified identifier support. On the previous demo, I showed a sample how it works with libindy and VCX. Now I also would like to remind key points related to this. So to create a fully qualified DFD, we need to pass a method name to did create function. This method allows us to specify to which network with public identifier relates to. So fully qualified can be with prefix like schema DID, create def, or user DID, or etc. Also, we added a new function Indy to unqualified view. This function can be useful in case the two sites like issuer and prover have different versions of Indy SDK and they want to communicate. So in this case, the issuer should unqualify his identifiers to be compatible with prover. Also, it's useful for communication between the verifier and prover. To support, now we support two versions of proof request. One of them allows specifying fully qualified identifiers restrictions, and the first one only unqualified form. The next, we added a new function Indy qualified DIT. This function allows us to migrate an existing DID stored in the wallet to fully qualified form. We need to pass the same DIT method parameter, and our DID and all related records in the wallet will be updated to use fully qualified form. In the end, I'd like to fully qualified. I'd like to point that Ledger API related functions can accept fully qualified form of identifiers, but always return the short form because in the pool doesn't support it. Next point, recently we got a request regarding the moving our Android artifacts on 21st version of Android API and indicate 12 because we used to build our Android libraries against GNU style library, but it isn't supported by Android anymore since isn't supported anymore. And so we rebuilt our artifacts against libc++ library, and now it supports 21st version and indicate 12. Next point, we updated our CD pipeline to publish Indy CLI for macOS build. Now it's available like zip archive like for Windows. Also, this release contains several bug fixes. One of them are pretty important, like fixed behavior proof validation, validation of restriction of proof verification, and also there are a couple minor bug fixes. Also, I would like to point that we have updated our how to add a new API call document. We added two new sections. The first tell us about how to add an API function which contains asynchronous function. It's a bit harder than the first original version of synchronous API, and here you can find this difference. And also one new section is regarding testing. The key point here is that we trying to follow TDD, test-driven development process, always writing test first and next implementation. We cover our services and helper functions with unit tests. We don't cover the command layer because it's a pretty complex structure and doesn't support mocking of objects in the current implementation. And it's usually pretty similar, just combine results of multiple services and totally correspond to external API function. An external API function we cover with integration tests. There are a lot of them for each API function in test folders. Also, these texts are divided into two kinds. One of them use CAPI directly, and one of them, some of them use Rust wrapper just for simplification. So that's it from my side. Thank you.
The fully qualified DID support is been requested for a long time. We're really excited to get that done. So thank you for your efforts, Artem. And that was a good explanation for people to follow along. We do look forward to getting feedback on this stuff. You can find us on Rocket Chat or course raise issues in Jira. But every time we release something new, we usually get some feedback on how to improve it even more. So we appreciate people's collaboration on that. Nem has been working on some of the dependency updates with pyzmq. You want to take us through that process, Nem?
Sure. Let me just share my screen. Yeah. So we performed a ZMQ update. We're using ZMQ in the system. So because of a lot of kind of vulnerabilities that were introduced and that were found, we wanted to update ZeroMQ to fix some of them. So 4.3.2 fixed a vulnerability where an attacker could do a stack buffer overflow. And we also wanted to update because there are other vulnerabilities fixed in the issues between the ones that we used and the latest one. Also, there were some bugs like race conditions with ZMQ linger, which we saw in production. So we wanted to update because of that also, and because of a lot of other bug fixes and performance improvements that the latest ZeroMQ library is carrying with itself. So we had a couple of challenges with updating ZeroMQ for our kind of components because we're using pyzmq wrapper around it. And we noticed that a regular install of a pip install pyzmq carried along with it a libsodium, which was in conflict with libsodium on our system that was used for libnestle. And we saw that when we run our code that we load two different libsodiums with two different versions, and we're constantly having unexpected bugs due to dynamic dispatch and version incompatibility. And then we noticed, well, reading the documentation, pyzmq allows us to install pyzmq without libsodium statically compiled in it, or without a local libsodium to be exact. But that required an install option. So once we figured out that we need to use an install option, we had other problems because install options cannot be specified inside of a setup.py, which we used to install our packages. We couldn't pack it in a Debian file because the same setup.file is used by FPM, and there were many different install options that offered different behaviors. In the end, we kind of landed on the install option, which is ZMQ bundled. This allows us to run the setup py for pyzmq. It comes with a libzeromq source. It compiles that source, and that source kind of is used by that compiled version is used by pyzmq, and that pyzmq is not carrying along with itself the libsodium, which will conflict, but instead we'll use a system libsodium that we have on our machine, which solved that issue of conflicting versions and can dispatch problems. We kind of managed to do a setup.py install. We removed the requirement from install that requires we had to make custom commands, which will allow us to install it with an install option and then install all other packages. And we made FMP work by manually adding the dependency from install requires using the Python setup.py arguments option when invoking FPM. So how that looks right now is we have setup.py, which has its setup file, but we have command classes for install development pyzmq. When we run an install, that will, before it installs all other packages, it will run a command, a pyzmq command, which will invoke a pip install with install options, ZeroMQ bundled, and then.
Nem, are you showing your code, I'm seeing your window with all the like a task switcher.
Really? Is it better now? No?
I think you need to switch windows and then switch back. Or reshare, yeah. Like it got held up. Zoom got stuck when you're switching windows, so.
Yeah. Is it better now?
Yes, now we're seeing your ID. That's better.
Okay.
So,
So
you were explaining where you made changes, and we missed all that.
So setup.py, we created command classes in the setup, and then we have install develop and pyzmq commands. And when we do a pip install, we run this custom install command, which in turn runs a pyzmq command, which will invoke a pip install with the ZMQ bundled option. So that's how we can manage to install pyzmq with a bundled ZMQ. And we, for the building of Debian packages, we added this Python setup.py arguments ZMQ bundled option here. So depending on the parameter which is passed, we only run that for packing of pyzmq. All other packages work the same as they worked before. So right now, when we install the pyzmq, in the plenum, when we install in the plenum, we will get the dependencies, which are good. And here is the latest Python 0MQ 18.1.0, which contains the latest lib0MQ. And that's about it.
Thank you for doing that, and it's glad to see I'm really glad to have the 0MQ update done with all the security fixes in that. That makes us confident in the release. Sergey K, let's talk about PBFT view change.
Okay, let me share my screen. Do you see it?
Yes.
Great. So I'm going to give a small PBFT view change status report. Well, first of all, why implement this thing? Why spend so much time and effort on this thing? Well, PBFT view change is a safe, formally proven way to change leader in a PBFT protocol, and our RBFT, which is used in Plenum, is just well, it's some way of generalization of PBFT, so it still applies. Currently used ad hoc approach is actually not safe. It has some edge cases where it fails. Also, PBFT view change should be much faster to run. A high-level plan for PBFT view change feature was as follows. First, we need to break monolithic replica code into several services. Actually, it's not real services. It's just isolated pieces of code still running in the same process. And the main purpose to do this is to make easier to change these pieces of code, easier to test them, easier to reason about them. Another point was to implement PBFT view change protocol as in a new service. Actually, first two items were performed in parallel during some period of time. Well, and this is also already done. Next, we needed to make some changes to services with old code extracted from old replica to make them compatible with PBFT view change requirements. Most notable changes are that we needed to use audit ledger in checkpoints, and another that we needed to stop resetting prepare sequence numbers in new view. I'll talk about this in more details a bit later. And the last item is to switch to PBFT view change protocol, make sure that all integration tests pass, make sure that all system tests pass, and make sure that load tests are successful. And actually now we are in this last stage of this plan. So previous steps are already done. I'm going into a little more details for those steps. First one was break monolithic replica code. Well, we introduced abstract service buses, internal and external bus. We extracted lots of old logic code into services, into ordering and checkpoint service. Ordering service is doing ordering. It's a main place where three-phase commit takes place, and checkpoint service is a service which can trigger catch-ups when it finds that the node is lagging behind. Another change was that we extracted some shared data into a common place, so it's clear which data is shared between services and which is not. And now old replica is mostly a container for those services and shared data, so the code was simplified a lot. Another thing was implementation of view change service as isolated service. It's also already done. It's testable on unit level, and we written quite a lot of simulation tests. And simulation tests are much better in this case than unit or integration tests, because time is injected, network is simulated, and they can run hundreds or thousands of different cases, different randomly generated cases in just seconds or probably minutes if it's about 1,000 cases, and they're perfectly controllable. So if they fail in Jenkins, they will definitely fail on a developer machine. So it's easy to debug them. And all those tests now pass, so we are pretty sure that we don't have problems with the view change protocol. I'll show just an example of such test. So, for example, we create some pool, we schedule some, well, we create pool with a random state, initial state, so all nodes have different state. Then we schedule at random some view change, and we schedule it at different times on different nodes. Then we wait for view change to complete, and then ensure that all nodes are in the same state, and all nodes are going to reorder all those requests that potentially have been committed at least on one node. And this test passes in just in probably 10 or 20 seconds. And it runs for, let me see. Well, here it runs for 200 examples, 200 different random examples. We have more such tests for view change and actually for other services, for checkpoint service and ordering service. This is already merged, tested by CI, so we are also pretty sure that there are no big problems here. Next things that we had to do is to do some fixes to current code. First of all, we needed to change checkpoints logic. All logic was very complicated, and checkpoints were basically intervals of ordered requests. But PBFT required checkpoints to be just pointers to some system state hash. And well, this is just like Git branches are just pointers to some commit hashes. And thanks to audit ledger, we now have this generic system state hash. It's just audit ledger hash. So we modified checkpoints logic accordingly, and this is already tested, merged. So this is done. And another thing was we needed to stop resetting pre-prepare sequence numbers. Old logic in plenum was resetting them to 0 in new view, but PBFT change required these numbers to be unique across views. So we had to fit this as well. Now on to current things. We are switching to PBFT change. We already have a PR raised. Of course, tests are failing. We are still fixing them. We found some problem. Well, actually, lots of those tests pass, but some are still failing. Fixing some of those tests revealed some mismatch cases, and for some of them we already have a fix, and some are not fixed, but we do have some tickets raised as we do have some follow-ups tickets raised for them, and I think it won't take too much time to fix them. So PBFT change is, I think, it's perfectly releasable in the next release, which is in October. We implemented new integration tests specific for new view change. They're already merged. Some of them are simple, some of that are not that simple, and version in master does tailor view change, but by sending internal message specifically to new PBFT view change service. But in the REST PR, where we already switched to PBFT view change for the main code, this tailor view change just does same thing as was done in the as was done in previous tests. So this is already integrated, and those tests pass. So I'm quite optimistic on the PBFT view change progress. I think, again, I think it will be released in the October release. So that's all from me.
Thank you very much, Sergey. Renata and Andrew and Sergey and Alex have all done a great job on this. This is probably the largest change we've made to Indy Node, well, ever. I think it's been a very large effort. So I appreciate it's gone into that. So we'll come back in 2 weeks and give you an update on the October release, let you know how things are going. It will be a bit lighter as far as throughput goes, because we'll be working on a lot of the Aries, the Aries architecture, the Aries libvcx evaluation estimate, PBFT view change. 2 other things, we're also supporting the Hyperledger Belgrade meetup in Serbia. So Nem will be presenting there. I plan to be there. So that'll be good. People can join us there. We'll also be supporting the Hyperledger Bootcamp Russia. And so in our next update, we'll have spent a significant time preparing those presentations. So that'll be good. With that, I thank everybody for presenting all the work that the team does. You're real professionals, and I appreciate everybody who watches the video. Please reach out to us if you have questions at chat.hyperledger.org. Or in the pound Indy channels, or you can of course
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.